Do you always feel like you look worse in photos than in real life? And it's why you hate getting your photos taken so much? Why is it that our faces seem to look so different in photos compared to what we see in the mirror? And we can't help but ask ourselves, is that how other people actually see me? Trust me when I say that. I know the exact feeling. And in this video, I'm going to help you understand why and share some style tips with you to be more photogenic. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jen, and on this channel we talk about defining and improving our personal style, not by blindly following trends, but by understanding and catering to our own individual uniqueness. If that's something you're interested in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and welcome to the channel. So I think when it comes to talking about what makes a face less photogenic, there are both objective and subjective reasons. And if we were to talk about the objective reason first, it has something to do with how wide the face is. And if I'm being more specific, it's actually the distance from the outer corner of the eyes to the edge of the facial outline. And that usually means you have some width in your cheekbones, and in these cases, the surface area of the face along the sides here is gonna appear especially wide from the frontal view. Now, in real life, our eyes are able to recognize that there is depth to the face. The facial features are not only placed in the center of the face, but they also protrude more forward, whereas the facial outline recedes back. You know how when you close one eye and you look at an object, and you close the other eye, you look at the same object, the position of that object will seem to shift slightly. That's actually our eyes giving information about the depth of the object. So that's what our brain uses to create three-dimensional images. And a camera lens is obviously not going to be able to capture that effect fully because there's only one lens, and what our eyes recognize as a 3D object becomes flatter and more two-dimensional in a photo. So if there's a wide distance from the eye to the facial outline, more of this surface area of the face is going to be captured as 2D, and that means naturally there's going to be less attention drawn to the facial features. It's sort of why procedures like buccal fat removal is such a popular thing amongst celebrities, because it naturally reduces the size of that surface area of the face, and it makes the facial features pop more in photos or on screen. And for these people, it's kind of their job to appear a certain way on screen. You know, it's more important than how they come across in real life. So in my opinion, that's why procedures like buccal fat is so popular amongst people like celebrities, despite all of the negative side effects that are associated with it. In my previous video, I talked about how wide-set eyes tend to be more photogenic, and that's because our vertical proportions are measured in fifths. So a wider distance between the eyes will make the outer fifths of the face look narrower in contrast. And close-set eyes will have the opposite effect, because having a closer distance between the eyes will make the outer fifths appear wider in contrast. So technically, if you have wide-set eyes but you also have wide outer fifths, then you might not be as photogenic as somebody that has wide-set eyes but narrow outer fifths. The distance from the camera is something that you might want to consider as well, because the closer the face is to the camera, the larger and more prominent the facial features will appear, especially the nose area where it protrudes the most forward. And the further away you are from the camera, the more the surface area of the face becomes emphasized. So if you feel like you look fine in selfies, but not when somebody else takes your photos, and that might be related to, you know, how far the camera is from the face and how much the surface area of the face is emphasized more. Or you might be the opposite, you know, if you hate taking selfies but you feel like you look okay when other people take your photos, then you might not like the effect of the middle third or the nose area becoming more emphasized with selfies because of the closer distance to the camera. So apparently being about 3 feet away from the camera is the most accurate depiction of how other people perceive our faces in an in-person interaction, like a one-on-one conversation. So it really comes down to how emphasized the facial features are versus how emphasized the surface area of the face is. So factors like the size of the eyes, the height of the nose bridge, the width and the roundness of the nose can all have an impact on how photogenic the face can be. So any features that add more dimension and depth to the face will generally generally look flatter and wider in photos. The next two reasons that make a face less photogenic, I think, are more so related to our self-perception. One of them being facial symmetry. A more symmetrical face will generally be more photogenic, but no one's face is perfectly symmetrical. There's too many external factors like posture or lifestyle that impact the symmetry of our faces. But we're so used to seeing our faces in the mirror every day, and the camera or the photo will flip that around, right? And because we know the smallest details of our faces the best, seeing our faces flip like that just makes it look a little bit more awkward. Even celebrities' faces also look different when we flip them around. It doesn't necessarily look worse, we're just not used to seeing their faces this way. But when it comes to ourselves, I think we're just a little bit harsher. Like, have you ever had a friend take your photo and they think you look fine, but you think you look horrendous? So I just think there's a general tendency for a lot of us to be overly critical when it comes to our own appearances. Another reason could be that a still face is not the only thing that makes us who we are. You know, we have our voice, our facial expression, the posture, our personality. Like, all of these elements combined is what makes us who we are, and photos can't possibly encapsulate that all. It really only captures the smallest second of a component of ourselves. And on top of that, things like social media or having more photogenic friends around makes it so easy for us to fall into the comparison trap. It's similar to facial symmetry. You know, we're kind of being overly critical about ourselves because we're just not used to seeing such a small component of who we are in a still shot. And so how we feel about our photos has a lot to do with self-perception as well, and those are the more subjective reasons of why we feel like we're not photogenic. So let's talk about some style tips for becoming more photogenic. And like I said, the objective reason that makes a face less photogenic has to do with the surface area of the face and the face looking especially wide and lacking in dimension in photos. So to start off with a tip for your hair, I would say face framing layers that cover the widest area of the face is naturally going to help with drawing more attention to the facial features. If we use myself as an example, my wide outer fifths is actually something that I am very, very insecure about. And you would have noticed by now that I actually never wear my hair back or in an updo when I'm on camera. So if you're concerned about your outer fifths being on the wide side, then using a middle part or a slight off-center part can cover both sides of the face, and that'll naturally help with drawing more attention to the facial features. And if you don't like having so much hair touching the face so much, then at least try to create a visual break with a few strands, even if you pin the rest of your hair back or pull it up, and that'll still be helpful in adding a narrowing effect on the outer fifths. Now, if you're concerned about a middle part highlighting your facial asymmetry more, a side part can still add a narrowing effect on the face if you style the hair in a way that frames one side of the face entirely. And that'll make the asymmetry in the face less noticeable, and it also helps with drawing more emphasis to one side of the eyes. Now, when it comes to tips for makeup, it's obviously going to involve contouring, and the traditional Western makeup style will tell you to use a diagonal contour line to accentuate the cheekbones more. But if your goal is to actually add a narrowing effect on the overall facial width, then contouring the entire outline of the face along the sides can be effective. And that's more of an East Asian makeup style, and I actually like combining both techniques. So I'll contour the overall outline of the face along the sides first, and then I'll go back in with my contour just slightly underneath the cheekbones to bring them out a little bit more. Now, if the width in the jawline is a concern for you, then using a heavier contour below the cheekbones, we're blending it downwards instead of up to cover the jawline will make this area appear a bit narrower. Most people only consider contour and highlight for adding more dimension to the face, but I actually think that blush is such an underrated technique because it can draw more attention to where the pigment is applied. So applying the blush and highlighter in the centers of your cheeks can not only highlight those areas, but make them appear more protruded. Because remember, the goal is to make the center of the face more protruded and the sides of the face more receded. So using the blush to draw more attention is going to help with making the center of the face appear more prominent. Now, if you have some roundness or some width in your nose, that's another area that will appear wider in photos naturally. The lack of definition in the nose bridge will make the nose appear a bit more two-dimensional. So paying extra attention to nose contour on the days that you know you're going to be photographed is a good idea. Another thing to pay attention to is shine, because a shiny surface is gonna draw more attention and it also distracts from your facial features, especially large and flat areas like the forehead or between your eyebrows, or areas where the lines of the face are highlighted more, like beside the nose along the smile lines. Make sure you use extra powder on those areas if you know you're going to be photographed. And if you use a highlighter, stick to a matte finish instead of a shimmery finish. The next tip is related to wardrobe, and is to avoid a turtleneck, because creating a separation between the face and the neck can highlight the surface area of the face more. But this doesn't apply if you have a weak chin, because when you have a weak chin, the face and the neck can actually look somewhat connected, so it kind of looks like one big surface area. And in those cases, it's actually better to use a turtleneck to create that clear separation between the face and the neck. And if you want more tips for weak chins, I have a separate video on the topic as well. Now let's talk about some tips related to confidence, with the first being find and know your best angles. At an angle, the curves and the protrusion of your features can be seen a lot better, so naturally more dimension is going to be added to the face. You also want to pay attention to your posture. For example, if you always have a tendency to lift the chin up, like I always used to, then that actually lengthens the chin more and it makes the surface area in the lower face a lot more noticeable. So pay attention to how you usually position yourself and at which angle your best photos are taken from. Another tip is to try filming a video instead. You're constantly moving in a video as opposed to staying still in a photo. So all of your facial expressions, the natural curves of your face, and the dimension can be seen a lot more in a video than in a photo. It's actually something that's helped me a lot personally, with starting YouTube and seeing myself more and more in video format has helped me feeling a lot less insecure even in photos. I mean, I still think that I look better in person than on screen, but I guess you guys will never find out. I hope you found all the tips helpful today, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.